Good morning, everybody. Yesterday, we heard that Lucy Connolly has pleaded guilty in a Crown Court to the charge of words that stir up hatred. This is in the aftermath of the mass stabbing event in Southport, where the son of Rwandan migrants went to a children's Taylor Swift dance class, stabbed 11 of them, and 3 of them were murdered in that incident. Now, in the aftermath of that incident, there were lots of things that happened. Of course, there were people going out on the streets. There were real thugs that were smashing up windows and things like that. And there were people who posted comments on social media about the event. And Lucy Connolly was one of those people who posted something on social media. Now, I wouldn't post what she posted. She said mass deportations, first bit of the post. Then the second bit of the post, which is what's contentious and led to her being arrested by the police, probably at the behest of the Prime Minister that we've got, two-tier Kia, who is imposing two-tier policing and two-tier justice. She said something about, I don't care if the asylum hotels are set on fire. If that makes me a racist, so be it. That's the third bit of her statement. Now, I don't agree with what she said there, but there's no way that she was inciting violence. She wasn't even anywhere near any of the protests that happened, some of which did turn violent, and I don't agree with that. But, you know, the reason that some of these protests did turn violent, as I've said before, is because there are state agents in the crowd who are stirring up trouble themselves and accelerating trouble so the media can have their pictures and they can then create the narrative that there's this huge far right in the country that needs to be clamped down on with draconian new laws or applications of existing laws. This is clearly obvious what's happening. The vast majority of people who went out to protest were protesting against crime, protesting against the breakdown of safety in our country, a lot of which is coming from migrant communities, exactly as we saw in Southport, as I've mentioned before. And people are not happy about this. People are not happy with mass immigration, which started with Blair and has continued all the way through all the prime ministers we've had over the last 27 years, up to now two-tier Keir Starmer. Now, the case of Lucy Connolly, of course, has received a lot of attention, mainly because she is the wife of a Tory councillor who's still a sitting councillor in Northamptonshire. Also because this is almost unprecedented here. There are precedents, but this in this case is that she has been arrested and held on remand for 2 months, nearly 2 months, until she had a court date yesterday, the 2nd of September, to put in a plea. She didn't put in a plea beforehand, but now she's pled guilty to the charge against her, which was words that stir up hatred. Why on earth she pled guilty, I don't know, but I imagine that an awful lot of pressure has been put on her as she's been kept in remand unduly. And this, again, is something that is completely abnormal. Yeah, if someone is a mass murderer, you keep them on remand. But someone just for writing something on social media that didn't hurt anybody, yeah, okay, the sentiments are not pleasant, I know that, and I wouldn't, as I said, I wouldn't do it myself, but she didn't hurt anybody. She expressed an opinion in the heat of the moment of something that's going on, and she deleted it 2 hours later, or within 2 hours. It wasn't even up on X as it was for, you know, hardly any time at all. She realised that she'd done something that she shouldn't have done. She deleted it, and that was that. But Starmer's stormtroopers came round to get her anyway, and they've locked her up in jail already in remand for 2 months. Now, we hear that people who are being held on remand unjustly, because you don't normally get held on remand except for three reasons. One is if you're a flight risk, that you're going to take off and leave the country and not appear in court. Second is if there's a risk of you reoffending, which I very much doubt because she deleted her own post within 2 hours. Or thirdly, sometimes, which is much rarer, is if it's for your own safety, which is very, very rare at all. I mean, you wouldn't hold someone on remand, unless they were some kind of, child done something to children in an area. I have to be careful of my words here. And people knew about it and they would come round and, introduce some kind of vigilante justice against you for those kind of things that happen. So in that case, you might be held on remand for your own safety. But that's very, very rare. Now, none of these three reasons apply to her at all. She's just someone who was banging off on social media, writing a social media post that she deleted almost straight away. And yet she's been in prison for 2 months held on this charge. And we hear that people who have been arrested because of things that happened in the aftermath of this mass murder in Southport, this mass stabbing event in Southport, which, by the way, is completely gone away from the news. They don't want you to think about this anymore. They just want you to think about the people that they're going after and arresting and saying, you had a reaction to this that we don't like, and making them seem, people like Lucy Connolly, is portrayed as being worse than the person here who actually went to the Taylor Swift dance class and stabbed 11 children. We don't hear anything about this man anymore at all. Who knows? There's things, who knows who he is, his background, whatever. We don't know anything about him. It's not even being mentioned. But people like Lucy Connolly are all over the papers and they're trying to make out, the powers that be, the police, the Crown Prosecution Service, the Starmer regime with their fake high morality, that she's bad, she needs to be punished by being put in prison for years. And it's absolutely appalling that she pleaded guilty yesterday, and the judge said you're likely to get a long custodial sentence for a single social media post. This is not the kind of thing that should be happening in England, the UK, anywhere, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, anywhere in the West, which is supposed to be free. And we can say now that freedom has gone and it's turned into tyranny, because this is the kind of thing that would happen in the Bolshevik Soviet Union. You say something that the regime doesn't like, or you criticize clients of the regime, which of course asylum seekers are. Many of them are bogus asylum seekers, but clearly the government is bringing people in to the country en masse. They could stop it with the Royal Navy and the Border Force, but the Royal Navy and the Border Force are meeting migrants in their dinghies halfway across the channel, bringing them on board their boats and escorting them to this country, and then putting them in 5-star hotels all over the place. And then it's no wonder people of this country are disgusted by this and don't want this to continue. But it doesn't seem like anybody is listening. They're just carrying on with this anyway. So, Lucy Connolly was one person who was just at the end of a tether, I imagine, about seeing what's happening in this country, and then said something on social media which crossed the line that the government has put in place there, an arbitrary line that they say. This was words that were stirring up hatred. There is a precedent. I've spoken about this before, the case of Tara Ahmed, who I know from the freedom movement. And she was arrested and jailed for 11 months for saying some things about the Grenfell Tower incident, which were deemed to be anti-Semitic. But they were just Facebook posts. That's something that did happen. And hardly anyone would stand up for her at the time. More people are standing up for Lucy Connolly because she's more there in the spotlight of the media. And this is abhorrent, that someone can be arrested, held on remand unjustly. You don't, as I said, you don't get held on remand if you are, and again, I'm going to be careful with my words, someone who has pictures of children. You know what I mean. Hugh Edwards is free. He's pled guilty to the charges against him. We all know what they are. But he's walking free. He's not on remand. He's got his sentencing hearing later this month, but he's walking free. The government is saying they're going to release 5,500 prisoners on September the 10th. Many of them who will have committed violent crimes, assault, stabbings, etc., and they're going to be set free to make place for people who have just written something in the heat of the moment on social media. This is utterly abhorrent and repugnant. And we can see here that the Starmer regime, the police forces, the Crown Prosecution Service, and the judges all seem to be working in cahoots with each other to bring about this new regime in the UK where people are going to be arrested for social media posts just for their words. Now, my view is, and it always has been, and it is the policy of the Heritage Party, that the whole edifice of hate, the whole concept of hate, should be completely written out of law. There should not be any laws against hateful words, hate crime, stirring up hatred, all of these things. There should be a law against inciting violence and inciting crime, as we always have done, and there always has been under common law. Because if you tell someone, go and stab someone, go and do this, go and hurt someone, well, that's inciting violence, and therefore, you are guilty, you play a part in anything that happens. But someone who's just banging off on social media, saying, I don't like this, I don't care if someone sets fire to this building. Okay, but essentially that's what she said in a few more words. Well, that's not inciting anything. That's just commenting, if this happens, I don't care. That shouldn't be a criminal. Yeah, okay, I don't agree with it. And then people can say, well, that was a horrible thing to say. Okay, you shouldn't say it like that. And don't do it again. But she realised herself, as I said, she deleted her own post within 2 hours of putting it up. So she must have realised when she calmed down after hearing, some things that were going on, that actually what she said was, not helpful. So she regulated herself. So why on earth they want to make an example of her and stick her in jail for years? I mean, this is beyond belief. When people who have done things to children, when people who have actually been violent, actually committed real crimes with their fists and their knives and their guns, and they're being released in prison or not even getting held on remand, they're walking free, and then someone is being put in prison for words that haven't caused anyone anywhere to be hurt. The victimless action. I'm not even going to call it a crime because, as I said, there shouldn't be the concept of hate in law anyway. And another point here is that this law, words that stir up hatred, is in the Public Order Act 1986. And you can imagine, okay, that was a long time ago now. That's nearly 40 years ago, 38 years ago. It was in the time of Margaret Thatcher, which is very surprising. It came in under her. But at that time, there was no social media. I mean, social media has only existed since about 2006, isn't it? It started with MySpace, then there was Facebook, and now we've got Twitter, X, all these things. But I mean, this was 20 years before social media had even been invented. So the law here of making it criminal to use words that stir up hatred uh, would have been created in that Public Order Act 1986 without anyone even having an inkling that social media was going to exist in 20 years' time. It was probably there, directed at something else that might be happening. People in gatherings, in large rallies, maybe on the street, speaking to crowds of hundreds or thousands of people, and then standing on the stage and then stirring up hatred against, a certain group or a certain person. That would have been what it was directed towards, not now social media. The thing is, we now have social media, it's been created, and you've got a law that was created before social media that is now being applied to a completely new thing. Where people just say things and, they don't intend for anybody to actually be hurt or harmed. They're just expressing opinions and, out of frustration at things that they see happening in our country that are being driven politically by the Uniparty, which are wrong. And now that old law is being used against them, which was never intended to be used against people for social media posts because they didn't exist in 1986. So we really have to look at this, and that's why I hold the position as I do, and the Heritage Party has as its policy to just completely get rid of this concept of hate in law and go back to things which are objective, that you mustn't incite violence or incite crime. And that's where we need to be. But I think a lot of people are very disturbed at the fact that Lucy Connolly here has pleaded guilty. Probably, who knows what pressure they can have on you if they're holding you on remand for 2 months. You can't see your family, you can't see your children, your child. She's got a child. She's not allowed to see a child. She's only got someone, from the state maybe giving her legal advice. I think she has got her own lawyer, but who knows what pressure they'll put on her. They say, look, you plead guilty to this, otherwise we're going to keep you on remand, with all the black and Asian women. Imagine they say that, as has been suggested by people in the media, that if you're white and you've said something, or you've taken part, or you've been found to have been taken part in some of the things that happened in the aftermath of the Southport stabbings, that you will be held on your own in a Muslim wing of a prison, or a black wing, or an Asian wing of a prison, whatever you like to call it. You're on your own, and they're going to be coming for you. And so someone might come and say, look, you plead guilty, we're going to put you in prison, we're going to keep you here for 3 years. But if you don't, we're going to keep you on remand in this Muslim wing, and you're going to get smashed up every day. Who knows what pressure they'll put on someone. If this is happening, and there was, I can't remember the name of the guy now, someone went on one of the mainstream media channels and suggested that white people will be kept in difficult circumstances in prison on remand, which again is utterly abhorrent and repugnant, to put people in harm's way if they're on remand in prison when they shouldn't even be on remand, because they're not a flight risk, and then they're not at risk of reoffending. So this is absolutely disgusting, what is happening here in the UK with two-tier justice and two-tier policing. And I hope that it brings the downfall of this regime even quicker than it would happen otherwise.